Should not take. Okay, we're officially live.
All right.
So welcome. This is Gay Valimont. She's running for Florida's first congressional district against Republican Jimmy Petronas. This is, I believe, Matt Gaetz's old seat, if I remember correctly.
It
Uh,
is.
and she also ran in the special election last year um, to replace when Matt Gaetz resigned in that weird
In
hullabaloo that
shame.
happened.
In
Um,
shame.
Yeah, and she overperformed a very big amount. Do you remember what was the percentage that you overperformed?
It was an R+37 district, and we narrowed that to an R+14 now. So
So,
22 points.
that's a big jump in a year, and obviously a lot more things have happened, since then. We've have a new war in the Middle East, uh, skyrocketing gas prices due to that. Tariffs have taken a bigger toll. ACA has been ripped apart.
Yep.
And obviously, in the last week and a half, we've seen Supreme Court get rid of majority minority districts. And before that even happened, Florida was already changing their maps. Um, how has your district changed between when you ran last time and now the new district, assuming that that's the district that you end up running in, the courts don't throw it out?
District hasn't changed. They obviously couldn't make it more red. We thought that they might take more of, so we have 3 counties plus a little bit of Walton County, and we thought that they would add more Walton County to counteract the Escambia County Dems that turning it blue, but they haven't. So, either way, it's an uphill battle for me, and, so I'm feeling the pain of everybody else that's getting redistrict.
I think that that's the goal. I think that they're trying to all across the country, but definitely in Florida when they're trying to go for 4 different seats that they're trying to flip through this gerrymandering. They're trying to make people feel discouraged and not want to show up to vote. Um, and
By any means necessary,
I think
and I
that
hope that drives more people to the polls.
I
When
think
they
I
tell you that you can't do something, you should do it.
yeah, I think that that's my hope. I'm also working on the David Jolly campaign, and I
Mhm.
think that we're hoping that turnout due to this craziness that's happening on the statewide level, in addition to how Florida's being run under DeSantis, is just is enough to get a bunch of congressional candidates to win, and
I
a
hope
bunch and
so.
obviously David Jolly, and hopefully I personally endorse Alex Vindman, but Angie Nixon, whoever ends up out of that primary,
Right?
Senate seat flips, and much more. Would you mind sharing kind of why you first ran for the special election last year and why you're running again for the seat again?
Yeah. Well, so, and it's kind of a long story, not to bore you to death, but, I'm a gun violence prevention activist. I have been in Florida for the last 15 years. I do that with a passion. Um, in 2020, my husband was diagnosed with ALS, and 6 months later, my son was diagnosed with a terminal brain tumor.
Oh
I
gosh.
lost both of them within 6 months, and after they were gone, um, I was sitting on the beach staring at the water because that's what brings me calm, is to stare at the water, and I got an alert on my phone that said, Matt Gaetz had filed a federal stand your ground bill, and I know that when I fought him in Florida about stand your ground, our gun homicide rate went up 32%, and I was not gonna let him do that federally. So, even though it was an R+37 district and it was Matt Gaetz, the Matt Gaetz show, um, I kind of felt I kind of felt like it was my duty. I felt like there was nobody better to fight him on this than me, and so I jumped in the race. And the whole first race, I spent most of my time explaining to people that, yes, my name is Gay, Gay. And then after he resigned, he beat me by, um, I can't remember, 30 points. It was pretty bad. But we knew that the ethics committee, excuse me, we knew that the ethics committee results were going to come out, but they weren't going to come out before the election. And so we knew he would be resigning. So we were ready when it happened. They covered it up with all that weird stuff about being the AG, and he was never gonna be the AG, but he resigned 8 days later, so we went straight into the special election, and we didn't know it was gonna be Jimmy Patronis, but it turned out to be Jimmy Patronis, and we ran a good campaign against him. One thing that's notable about Jimmy Patronis is that he's not from here. He doesn't live here. He doesn't know the people here. So, yeah, that's it. And he won because he's a Republican, period.
Yeah. I saw the ad that you did not long ago where you, welcomed, Congressman Petronas as a tourist, and I thought that was a very, funny, but very I think it gets people's attention because like, it's mocking him, but it's also not, like, going it's not as an attack ad that you see in typical
Right.
congressional races either.
It's not a hate everybody ad, the typical, and
Yeah,
that's what we were trying to do with our ad. We were sitting around going, "How are we gonna get people's attention and not bring everybody down?" Because all the political ads are like, oh, hate something."
and there's a
And
scary music, and there's, like, so and so wants to have a bunch of rampaging criminals in your community and blank supports.
exactly.
Yeah.
I've been seeing commercials from we because we're so close to Alabama and tomorrow is Alabama's primary day.
Yeah.
We have seen all of those commercials on local news, and man, you would not imagine some of the commercials that we're getting about putting immigrants in electric chairs and sending them to the moon, and that is an actual ad that made it on TV. It is disgusting, and then there's another one about transgender athletes, which has nothing to do with the crisis that we have in our pocketbooks, our
Yeah.
wallets. It is, but that's what they're still running on. They're still running on the same old stuff, and what we're running on is problems that everyday people have right now, and everyday people are can't afford their gas, can't afford homeowners insurance, can't afford health care, or their health care is getting, you know, taken away. We are in crisis right now,
Yeah.
and to talk about the 9 transgender athletes, that this affects is a waste of everybody's time, and we need to start talking about how we're gonna solve our problems.
Yes, I think that they think that Republicans think that they can drag Democrats into culture war debates, into on things that affect a small amount of people in these individual states that they're campaigning in or districts they're campaigning in hopes that one, that Democrats will follow them into that rabbit hole, which they have in the past,
Yep,
um, and not focus on healthcare, uh, gas prices, pocketbook issues that affect 99% of the voters rather than the 1%. I think that and they also hoping that we focus on that 1% rather than the 1% that's actually destroying our livelihoods through their tax cuts and various other things. So I think that and in the past, it has worked for them. I think that it's really hard to get the American people to follow that when they, themselves are experiencing such awful day-to-day, uh, pocketbook issues.
yeah,
And I think that Democrats, or at least some Democratic politicians that are running, are addressing these issues head on, and
yes,
not falling into it. Leadership, party, electeds, different story. I'm
not
sure,
so much.
and we'll get into that. Um, if you this is, I guess, getting into it. I guess there's a big debate among many. I guess on the inside baseball element of it is if you were to be elected, would you support Hakeem Jeffries as the next leader, a speaker?
To see other people emerge. I think that there has not been enough leadership. I think that the and look, I'm not discounting what the Democrats in Congress have done. Their hands have been tied. I understand that it is a difficult job. It has to be super difficult right now under a Trump presidency and a Congress that is not functional. I get that. But I also keep coming back to the fact that we're not doing enough. 2 weeks ago, the Supreme Court gutted the Voting Rights Act. And here in the South, where we have more Black voters than any other place in the country, this is gonna affect our elections severely, and I
Yes.
looked to the party for answers, and what I got from the party was, "This is what happened, and that's it." Um, and what I need are solutions. What we all need is direction, or how we're gonna solve these problems. Um, would I support a Hakeem Jeffries? I don't know, maybe I need to meet him personally.
I think that that's interesting because I think I would agree. I think we have not seen a clear vision or leadership in terms of that. I think that yes, of course, it's hard when you don't have any levers of power. Like in the Senate, you have more levers because you're the filibuster. You can block things. You can fight things a lot more. The House, you don't have that same type of leverage if you're in the minority. Um,
Mhm.
you have to hope that Republicans cross over and vote no or sign a discharge petition, which has happened, I will say, quite a bit. And that does require some level of leadership. I think that we've seen a lot more focus on trying to get states to redistrict in the North and the Midwest for 2028 rather than focusing on what we're going to do to get new voters to our side to vote for us rather than just change the maps around for 2026. And I think that that's been something that we've seen that's struggling with.
Yeah, we gotta be clear about the maps. We gotta be clear about redistricting and what it is. California went to the voters and said, "Do you think we should redistrict because we have more Democrats or because of the last
Yeah.
election?" The the electorate voted yes. And
Yes.
then Virginia, they took it to the voters and they voted yes. What's happening in Republican states, what's happening in the Southeast is not reflective of what
Right.
the voters want or what the voters need. You know, if you can't win outright, you gotta cheat, and I think that if you're gonna redistrict, you have to take it to the voters, and what we're doing in Florida, in particular, is illegal. It's blatantly illegal. In 2010, we voted to not gerrymander maps based on party or race, and
Yeah.
man, that's exactly what we're doing right now. That's exactly what Ron DeSantis is doing, and if our Supreme Court does not stand up and do the right thing, we're in a lot of trouble.
What are the chances that they do the right thing in this case?
I mean, you would like to think that, in many instances, our judicial system has stood up, right? Our Supreme Court has made some terrible decisions, but for the most part, our lower courts have stood up. So I'm hoping that when they took their oath of office to to uphold the Constitution of Florida, that they will blatantly see what this is. And you know what? It's on the Republicans, on the Republican side, they're just throwing spaghetti at the wall. It's seeing if it'll stick. Whatever will stick, we're gonna try this, and maybe the Supreme Court will vote in favor of us. I don't see how that's possible, and I don't see how they could win in a court of law.
Yeah, I think that it's a very clearly partisan map. DeSantis has so many statements out there saying that we're doing this to have Republicans in Congress, which is
Yeah.
like very clearly against the law of against partisan gerrymanders that is in the state constitution due to the voter referendum you just mentioned. And
Mhm.
now I read an article that the attorney is arguing before the judge that the state legislature had a different intention when drawing the maps than DeSantis when he announced them and called on them to make the map, saying the legislature was not intending it for it to be a partisan map, so therefore it doesn't violate said law. But I
Blatantly
think
does.
I think that that takes a lot of make believe to let that reason kind of
Agreed.
slide. I think that it's very clearly that that's not what happened. It's very clearly that DeSantis said it, and some
Yeah.
Republicans pushed back on it, but at the end of the day, it was not anywhere close enough to stop it. And you saw 4 members of Congress targeted. Now, some of those seats are still ones that Democrats can win, especially in a year like this, but
Yeah.
it's still not. It's going to take a lot more work and a lot more determination, and It's going to be a lot harder because there's also a lot of uh, laws in Florida that make it harder to show up to vote before this even happens. So I think that
Exactly. And
It's
we can talk about the SAVE Act and all those things that they have put into place. Florida voters already showed an ID when we show up to vote,
yes,
right?
yeah,
And the way that they're painting this SAVE Act, is that, it's just showing that you live here. Well, no, it's not. It's showing that you have to show a birth certificate, not in this election, but the next election. And I hope that that is challenged because they're painting it as if Democrats don't agree with having to show an ID. I don't mind showing my driver's license when I go vote. That is fine.
yeah,
Proves that I am, and that's my ballot. Give me my ballot and let me cast my ballot. I don't particularly mind that. What I do mind is making it even harder. Making it harder for I was born in 1972. My birth certificate looks like it was on a scratch piece of paper. And that's what most people before computers were like the thing. That's what most people's birth certificates look like.
yeah.
So it's obstacles, and now they wanna
The,
put ICE agents outside of voting locations
the,
and all kinds of obstacles.
the thing is, like, when I think that when some politicians on the Democratic side have said, like, "Oh, Republicans will try to rig the 2026 elections," we're not saying they're going to flip votes. We're not saying that they're gonna do what Republicans accuse Democrats of doing in 2020. We're
Right.
saying that there's gonna be obstacles to make it so hard, like the gerrymandering. Like, that's very clearly an attempt to we know that we're not gonna win on fair terms. We know it's gonna be a blowout if we don't do anything to change it. So we're gonna change the maps in Alabama, Louisiana, Florida, North Carolina, Texas,
Yep.
wherever it might be, and we're going to continue to make it harder to vote. Obviously, the Republicans seem to have blocked the SAVE Act, at least temporarily nationally, but there's efforts to do it statewide levels, like you mentioned in Florida. And I think that it's not like some people don't have access to their birth certificate. It's really hard for them to find.
Yep.
Some states are requiring passports. Not everyone has a passport, and it's like so many different
And there's a
convoluted
there's a
things.
fee along with getting all of those things. Like, there's a fee
Yeah,
that goes along with and kicking Americans while they're down and making them go pay $100 for a passport to be able to cast your vote as an American is the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard. A
the thing is,
passport is identification so that you can travel abroad.
yeah,
Why within the borders of our United States would somebody need a passport to show who they are?
yeah.
Makes no sense.
Literally, I just came back from being abroad for the semester just a few days ago, and, yeah, I had to show my passport, but again, like you said, I'm leaving the country or entering the country.
Mhm.
But if I'm the thing is, the whole idea is that they're hoping and banking on the idea that if people have to pay an extra fee or have to dig through their, attic for whatever it might be, or go to the DMV and wait in lines for them to get their documents, that will be too much of a thing. "Oh, I'm just not gonna vote. This is not
Yeah.
worth it." Um, Especially in a state like Florida or a state like Texas, like, "Oh, my state hasn't gone blue in however many years,
Mm.
and so is it is my vote gonna even matter if I even go through all of this craziness?" And then but then a lot of people are gonna have that feeling, and that could actually switch a House District Senate race or a governor's race, and I think that that's what they're hoping, um, and that's nothing new for the Republicans. They've been trying to do this type of thing for decades.
Yep.
Um Seen in the Jim Crow era, we've seen it since, seen it escalated since, the Roberts Court said that, racism is not really a thing in our politics anymore, so therefore, we don't need the VRA, and then we saw it further disintegrated under the Callis decision 2 weeks ago, and
Yeah.
so and they're throwing out election votes, like Louisiana, they were actively voting in the primary, didn't care.
Cannot believe that. Stopping a primary in the middle of a primary. Um, th- I don't think that this election cycle that we're going to see any rational decisions. I think that the Republicans are so dead set on eliminating the Democratic vote in whatever way they can. And I hope that people do not get discouraged because what we're facing is the constant barrage of stories every day that bring us down, that make things worse. Just heard that jobs numbers came out and job growth is down, but inflation is up, which means everything's costing more and we're not making any more money. I mean, we are upside down in this country right now. And
Yeah.
if we don't elect a new Congress, which is our only recourse right now, is electing and changing Congress because it's a co-equal branch of government, which they have abdicated their all of their responsibilities to Donald Trump, and it's time that we take Congress back because we need some normalcy. We need we need movement in the right direction. We need economic relief in this country. We are all struggling. And anybody that says they're not struggling with gas prices, with homeowners insurance, with rent, with mortgages, with health insurance costs, then they're lying because it's
Yeah.
affecting everybody.
I think yeah, exactly. I think that, um, I don't think you can the Republican Party's messaging of the Dow's at 500, which is how, former AG Bondi, put
Yeah.
it before, she had to be let go because she was not enough of a foot soldier, for the president, so therefore she had to be pushed out. But the thing is that I don't think that's a great message, and I think that but they also don't really have an effective message because all of these issues, because like, not always, but in a lot of cases, you don't always have a situation where the economy is not always the president's fault. Sometimes it's just but this is tariffs, the Iran war, all things of choice that Trump and the DOJ and the GOP have, fought for, encouraged, and vociferously defended until and now they're like, "Well, we can't not defend this because then Trump will attack us in our primary," and we saw what happened to Bill Cassidy for doing one vote, back
Doing the
in
right thing, standing up for vaccines, which
now
is science-backed.
I it's hard to feel bad for Bill Cassidy given he did approve, RFK and
True.
he's the reason why we have him, um, but you see it Thomas Massie in Kentucky, we'll see how that whole race plays out tomorrow,
Right?
it's gonna be close, and I think that it's gonna be very interesting to see how that race plays out because I think that if Massie pulls it out, it will be a sign for a lot more Republicans in a tough year. They might start standing up on certain issues because they're like, "Okay, well, we can win a primary." If Massie, who's been very outspoken, can win a primary, then maybe we can stand up in an election year. I hope. I'm not holding out hope, but
Yeah, I'm not full of hope that Massey will pull it out. It's really hard to root for him.
yeah,
But uh, but this is what's happened to the economy. This is getting back to the economy. You know, we went through COVID. You were talking about how it's not always the president's fault. We
yes,
went through COVID, which started under a Donald Trump era,
agreed.
right? And then Biden inherited a really, really bad economy. And then we got to a point with Biden where we flatlined and we didn't lower costs. And then by the time we flatlined and Trump came back in and then tariffs hit, everything went back up. But we also have to hold the people accountable who are raising the prices and inflating the prices
Yeah,
artificially because the prices went up during COVID and they never came back down once we solved the transportation issue. Once we made changes, once we came out of it, prices never came down because nobody ever told them that they needed to come down. We need oversight. We need to make sure that companies are not taking advantage of all of us. That's a big
yeah.
part of our economy right
I
now.
think that price gouging was a huge issue that I think that I too often don't hear either party really talking about when they talk about,
Mhm.
affordability. Obviously, that's the buzzword right now, and it's a good one, but I think that if you talk about affordability and don't actually have
Plans.
policy to back it up, it is kind of just a buzzword, and
Right.
the thing is, if you look at, Abigail Spanberger or, Mikey Shell in Virginia or New Jersey, they
Mhm.
they talk about affordability, but then they also backed it up with minimum wage increase or whatever it might be, price gouging, um, trying first to actually bring down prices, bring down inflation, bring down all these things, while
Yep.
also giving common sense, like, messaging. And I think that that's all those every single part of those things has been missing for the Democratic Party leadership is
Yeah.
the plan, the messaging, and the follow through. And now the follow through is really hard to do right now. Obviously, we don't have any power, but we could at least get the first 2 correct, and I have not seen a clear, um, policy or vision on those
Plan.
things. What is your stance? Obviously, AI is a big thing. Um, there's a lot of talk about moratoriums on data centers. Where do you stand on AI and the data centers and all of these things?
I think the data centers and what the data centers can do, the stress that they put on the communities around them, it's an individual decision, but we have to face the fact that AI is going to replace jobs. And if we don't create jobs, working jobs, jobs where people build houses, jobs where people use, use their hands, um, and commit to making community college free and commit to making technical school free and train these people to work with their hands and build things, we're not going to get to a place with an AI um, economy
Yeah,
where people are going to be able to survive. The biggest thing that we can do right now for the economy is to pass the 21st Century Road to Housing Act. And it's a bipartisan bill. Have you ever heard of it?
I've heard that's the one that just that passed the Senate by I think it was like unanimous. Was it unanimous or it was like close? It was like very. It was very like I know it was like 90 votes at least, if I remember correctly.
Yeah. It's a bill that makes sure that goods that we build houses with are cheaper, that we take corporations out of being able to go in and swoop up big portions of land so that they can inflate the prices for rent. It is a pathway to home ownership. It is what we can do right now to make it easier for people to own a home, to help us build more houses. Because the reason that we have a an affordability problem when it comes to housing and when it comes to rent and buying a house is because we don't have enough houses. We don't have enough buildings that do that. I want to give tax breaks to people to build affordable housing on places that have been abandoned already. A slab, these warehouses that you see that are
Yeah,
huge that are not being built on. Save the trees. Don't cut the trees down. Let's give them tax breaks to build on on that land where there's already a slab. It's already been plumbed. There's already electricity running to that slab, build on top of that. That's what we should be doing, making it easier for people to build homes so that we have enough so that we keep prices down.
I think that makes a lot of sense. I think that that's a we have a yeah the housing bill that you just mentioned. Obviously was very bipartisan in the Senate. Um, I think it was led by Elizabeth Warren, if I remember correctly, on the Democratic side, and
Mhm.
currently Mike
Tim Scott.
Johnson yeah,
Tim Scott.
And Mike Johnson is holding it up in the House, um,
He is.
and we'll see if he is either discharge petition forces his hand, like it has on, like, 10 other votes, um, or if he'll willingly do it because it's very bipartisan and very much supported by, his own caucus and the
Yep.
Democratic caucus. Obviously, you're not gonna get everyone on board on either side, but at the end of the day, you need to fight for the American people, not care about who's necessarily your like, who's voting no, care about who's voting
Right.
yes, get to 218, get to, uh, 60 votes in the Senate, and I think that I guess the question I was gonna ask is, obviously, you're in a swing to even right-leaning district, um,
Yeah.
what are there anything is there anything that you would say you disagree with the Democratic Party on policy-wise that you campaign differently from Democrats on?
Um, no, but I talk about things that the Democratic Party doesn't typically talk about. I talk about term limits a lot. I believe that we are in the middle of an administration that has shown us very clearly what corruption looks like at the highest levels. And I think to get corruption out of our Congress, out of our Senate, we have to make sure that people are not sitting there forever
Yeah,
because we are seeing people die in those seats, right? We're seeing people Frederica Wilson hasn't been seen in a month, and
yeah.
nobody knows what she's doing. Her constituents have no idea what's happening. I don't think that's right. I think that term limits are necessary, and I think that Congress should have an election every 4 years, and I believe the House should have elections every 4 years, and they should have 4-year terms and only 2 terms, and I think that's it. That's all you should have is 2 terms in Congress, 2 terms in the Senate, and I think Senate terms should be 6 years. Um, because when you sit in a seat for so long, you forget who you represent. When you're in Washington year round, you don't remember your neighbors at home. And if you have to run while you're trying to do your job, and that's every 2 years, I mean, to run a successful campaign, it's a year-long process. So as soon as you get elected, you're running again.
Yeah.
And you don't have the time to spend on your actual job, which is representing the people of your district and the people of the United States. Um, that's a big thing I think we also need to consider, yeah, we have to get rid of Citizens United. We have to make sure that we're taking money out of politics as much as possible. And I tell people when I'm making fundraising calls, yeah, I hate money in politics, but as long as the other side has money, I have to
Yes.
ask you for 5 or $10. And that's a difficult ask right now because everybody is
Yeah.
struggling. Um, there are a lot of things that I think the Democratic Party um, will focus on, but is not typically what the people of my district care about.
Yeah.
Like, we need to be talking more about healthcare.
Yes.
We have to talk about healthcare. My personal healthcare, went from $250 a month to $1,000 a month for a
Right.
single woman with no health problems. It's in my story's pretty usual, but we also have people losing their Medicaid. And in June, a whole bunch of people are going to be kicked off their Medicaid, and these are children and disabled.
Yeah.
And I think there's a misconception about what Medicaid does for you. It is health care. It is health care. We want to keep our people healthy. But, the whole point of this administration is to kick us all while we're down, to eliminate the middle class, to make one superior class and one lower class. And that's what they're doing to our middle class. And if we don't all stand up, cast a vote, like at the bare minimum, we have to get people to go to the ballot box. No matter how scary it is, no matter how hard they make it, we have to exercise our right to have our voices heard and to change this.
I would agree. I think that, yeah, like we said, there's definitely gonna be a lot of scare tactics that are gonna be used. We've always seen some in terms of the legislative scare tactics.
Mhm.
We've not thankfully seen the military and the police force tactics at our polling places yet, but we have not gotten to the core crux of the primary season yet. And I think that as we get closer to that, as we enter the summer, that we'll start seeing that more often.
Mhm.
And definitely as we get closer to November, we'll see it. Unfortunately, I hope that one thing that I hope the Democratic Party leadership is working on, the DNC is working on, is money and people to kind of give a barrier between those forces and the voters so they don't feel as scared, they feel protected, they feel whatever that may look like. I don't know what that would look like. I don't know how you could do that, um, following election rules and distance rules, but I think that there has to be something more than just, um, go out there and vote, but we're not gonna actually help you feel more safe while you're doing it. Um, and I think that that's a big thing. I think that another issue I wanna get into, and I know this is a very complicated issue and very, I would say stressful issue in campaigns, is obviously foreign policy. We're talking about Iran war, um, but also as the war kind of dies down in Gaza and we're seeing the Russia-Ukraine war, there's a lot of debate on how we support our allies and how we push back when we don't like what our allies are doing. What is your kind of view on all the different foreign policy points of that Congress is going to be dealing with?
We have, there was this huge thing in the beginning of the Trump administration about helping Ukraine. And helping Ukraine would have been the one solid thing that we could do to save, democracy, to promote democracy where it needs to be. Um, and they said, Trump said we didn't have any money to help them, but now we're spending $1 billion a day fighting an illegal war that was unnecessary. We were not under an imminent threat from
No.
Iran, no more so than we have been for the last 42 years. And not to mention, We had an agreement with Iran. We had an agreement where we went in and we were checking on their uranium and making sure that they were not building bombs. We had an agreement and Trump killed it. Now, we can all talk about why we're in this war, but I can guarantee you it's not because of anything that they're saying. The reason that we are in this war is so that we're not talking about the Epstein files.
Yes.
I think is the number one reason, and because of Netanyahu, which takes me to the next war that we're going to talk about. Um, Netanyahu is, he's the one leader I think that has been able to persuade Trump to do his dirty work. Um, Netanyahu knows that as long as he's in power, as long as he's at war, he cannot be held for war crimes. I stand with the Israelis, the Israeli people, um, no doubt. But what Netanyahu is doing and what he has done in Gaza is a war crime, is genocide, and he needs to be held accountable. I don't trust Netanyahu any more than I trust Donald Trump.
I think that I think that Netanyahu has definitely won out his welcome in
Yeah.
Israeli politics. I think that there's a very likely possibility that when elections are held in, I think, October in Israel, that he is voted out. Um, and I think that just like very similar to how Viktor Orban was voted out just a short time ago.
Yeah.
Um, and I think that like we just saw the Israeli president refuse to pardon Netanyahu at the demand of Donald Trump for the last several months.
Mhm.
Even Donald Trump even threatened to cut off all aid, both offensive and defensive, to protect Netanyahu, which um, I think people have different views on offensive versus defensive aid and all of that. But what I think anyone can agree that cutting it off for that reason is just totally um detrimental to the Israeli people's safety and to the Palestinian people's safety. And I think that it's not and the fact that he was willing to do that and the fact that Netanyahu was willing to play along and not say, hey, um, that's not necessary. He could have easily done a public address and said to the president, I hope you do pardon me, but like, let's not connect aid to whether or not you make that decision. I think that there's an unholy alliance between the two of them. I do think that Trump wanted to enter this war just as much as Netanyahu did. But I think that he obviously Netanyahu has been trying to get a U.S. president for the last 30 years to join this war, and even Bush was not willing to do it. And I think that says a lot, given Bush had he enjoyed he wanted to enter these wars
He
for
did
oil,
he enjoyed war, yes, you're right.
and so they
And I
wanted.
think that it was this is a war of convenience for Donald Trump.
Yes,
It is a war that is going to and he's in if you notice, he is in no hurry to end it.
no,
And that is the sole thing that we need to do right now. And even if we ended that war in Iran today and the Strait of Hormuz opened, we wouldn't see the relief from that for 6 months.
yes,
6 months.
and I think the interesting thing is that before the war started, you're not gonna see me weeping for the Ayatollah.
Right.
I think that no one's saying that we're pro Iran. They shouldn't be developing a nuclear weapon, but there was not a 2-week deadline like Netanyahu has been suggesting for the last 30 years. Wasn't the case. But also prior to the war starting, the Strait of Hormuz was not controlled by anyone. People could and now, not only is it closed, when this war ends eventually one day and the Strait of Hormuz is open, one thing it will never have again is Iran will forever know that they have the ability to have that leverage whenever they want, however they want. And I think that
Yep.
that is a thing they didn't have before, and now they have it, and we can never reverse that.
Well, that's the
Now
problem. Iran has more power now than they had before we went
we're
in.
in a worse place with Iran, and I think I was okay with the idea theoretically if there was an actual plan to stop the Iran nuclear program and get rid of all their capacity, if there was a way to do that, get rid of regime, but there's not a way to do that. Well, one, he didn't have a plan. His plan was to get rid of the Epstein files from the headlines, and he's somewhat succeeded with that. But the thing is he's replaced that headline with the constant gas prices or the constant um every single one of his MAGA bases in terms of the prominent people have come out against him because of the war and the gas prices, and in addition to all the people that came out against him for the Epstein files. And
We can't let people forget about it. Like, we have to continue to talk about the Epstein files because these women, no one's been held accountable.
yeah,
No one has been held accountable. And now they're talking about, you know, pardoning Ghislaine Maxwell. And that is just, it's as blasphemous as Trump acting like Jesus. I mean, it is.
I think that it seems like everything he's done the last, like, I would say I'm not pro anything he's done in the last, like, 10 years, but, like, I think in the last year, he's really just done everything to piss off his own base. Even, like, he
Like,
pissed
how
off
far can he take it,
he
you
went
know?
after the evangelicals with his AI Jesus meme that you just mentioned. He's angered the people that turned out to be a little bit less conspiratorial as we thought about the Epstein files. I think that they were not completely accurate, of course, but there was they obviously were focused on Epstein files, and he claimed to be also, and they are angry that he's steamrolled them, and there's still no sense of closeness to finding out who was involved and prosecuting them with if the deadlines of prosecution have not passed already, and also now the no new wars. We have a war.
Yep,
Uh, I just read in the last 10 minutes that he is drafting plans for potential military attack on Cuba, which is of course like going to be a huge issue right in your backyard. Um,
yep.
and I think that obviously he did the attack in Venezuela, and who knows what he'll go after next. He's talking about making Venezuela a 51st state. Um, he's wants to he was going after Greenland, all these just random
DC
things.
should be our next state.
Yes, I think that that's very common
Puerto
sense. If
Rico.
any
Mm.
any any of these states would make more sense. It's honestly, like, offensive, and I think he means it I don't think he means any of this. I think it's a big middle finger to DC and Puerto Rico. It's like, I will consider these random countries as a 51st state before I even mention the idea of the 2 that have been actively seeking statehood for over a decade.
Yeah,
And
and
then you see
it's a predominantly black city and then
yeah,
a predominantly Hispanic, region,
yeah,
and so
exactly.
he's not gonna give them any rights.
Of course not.
He's gonna make sure that they don't have
And
representation.
and then also you have the ballroom and, the reflecting pool, and now he's, in the last 24 hours, he's now wants the helipad, so helicopters don't, destroy the South Lawn, which is not a bad idea. Like, I get the South Lawn being protected from helicopters landing on it, but, like, is this really the time? No, it's not. I think that
No, it's not.
but the ballroom is just so blasphemous, especially since he used his, the disturbing, assassination attempt on him to then garner sympathy to then build a ballroom when our children at our schools do not have ballrooms to protect themselves in our schools or in our, Walmarts or any other place that there's mass shootings. They don't have ballrooms, so why should the president? Um,
Never once in all of these assassination attempts, even the Charlie Kirk, assassination, has that side ever talked about gun violence prevention?
no.
And that is the one thing that we should be talking about when those instances happen, stopping people from having guns that shouldn't have guns. That would be the quickest way to stop this, but instead, he said, "Oh, and I need an additional $1 billion of your taxpayer money
Yes,
to
it's
fix my ballroom."
the thing is that, like, I was reading that obviously they're trying to put it in their new, I would say, the the big beautiful bill 2.0 that they're trying to do, where they're gonna fund ICE and all these other atrocious things. They're trying to put, the $1 billion of the ballroom in there. The Senate parliamentarian just ruled that they would need a 60 vote, threshold to approve that, which they're not going to get. They might get Fetterman, but other than that, they're not going to get it. Um,
Yeah.
but there's 6 Republicans that have said, wait, even if they're pro the ballroom, they're like, we don't want taxpayers paying for it. One of them being Rick Scott, funny enough. So that surprised me, honestly, that Rick Scott's even against
Mhm.
this. I
That's
think
definitely surprising.
shows I think that if the fact that a person like Rick Scott is willing to come out publicly against the president on this vanity project, at least taxpayers paying for it, shows where he knows where the people might be, especially in Florida, that this is not something that people want and people are very much against.
Yeah.
Um, I think that I was wondering, obviously as we near the end, I was wondering um kind of what your plan is to get that next 15% overperformance from your 15% last time, how to win this district. What's your plan in the coming um couple months until November?
I think that, um, I think that what we're seeing is a lot of people are being disenfranchised that are on, the MAGA base. I think a lot of people are starting to realize, like, about Marjorie Taylor Greene and Thomas Massey have realized that Donald Trump doesn't have their best interest at heart and that his policies are doing harm to their constituents. And I think that we are gonna start seeing more people. They won't admit that they're gonna vote for a Democrat, but it happens one conversation at a time.
Yeah.
It has to happen. The way I was able to garner so many votes the last time was through individual conversations, through talking through the issues that matter most to the people of Northwest Florida, and not conversations about transgender athletes. It's about what's happening at your kitchen counter. It's about what's happening in your wallet. It's about
Yeah.
what's happening in your life and what affects you and how I can make changes to those issues. What I have to do is stay away from talking to Republicans about Donald Trump
Yes.
because what happens is particularly in a district like this when there's twice as many Republicans as there are Democrats, they don't want to be told they were wrong.
No.
They never even if they know they were wrong for voting for him for the first time and certainly the second time,
Yeah.
they don't wanna be told that they were wrong. So, the way that I avoid that is talking about the real issues, and that's really what Democrats have to do. We have to start talking about how we're gonna solve the problems, what we're gonna do to make things better, passing the 21st Century Housing Act, passing the John Lewis Voting Rights Act, so that
Yes.
we don't have to go through this ridiculousness every time we have an election. Because while I like to think our side is better, we have to counter whatever they do. And so where does it end? Where do these redistricting maps and those things, where does all that end?
It's a mess, and I think that you're dealing with a situation where, yes, I'm glad the Democrats are willing to fight fire with fire after decades of not doing so, and
Right.
but the thing is, at the end of the day, the goal should be, needs to be, and is, I think, for the National Democratic Party, is to pass a ban on gerrymandering nationwide. But as long as one state, one Republican state is able to do it, then one Democratic state should be able to do it, and tit for tat. And the thing is, we have to be also uh, we have to recognize the fact that Democrats are held to that higher standard of the more high ground because we have set ourselves at that level in terms of some.
And we have to stop doing that. It's
Yes,
we have to stop taking the high ground. I'm not saying break laws or
no,
do things that but like we have to play as dirty as they are.
I think I
Um,
think that
we can't we can't be nice anymore.
I think as much as I love Michelle Obama, the era of when they go low, we go high is over.
Mhm.
I
And
honestly
and
don't
and
know.
she recognizes that too.
And if I'm gonna be honest, I think that the time when she said it, it was almost not applicable because we were entering that Tea Party era. Then that's where we've um.
Right.
And I think that we've, and if you look at what happened with Matt Gaetz, like I understand that yes, he probably was never actually being considered for Attorney General, but what should have happened was Trump should have just said, he could have put out a Truth Social post and said, "Matt Gaetz, I'm calling you to resign," and he would just resign because whatever. But the thing is, this whole idea of, like, actively for a month and a half considering him for attorney general, it denigrated the office of attorney general, even though he never ended up serving in it. And the only thing that brings me some element of hope for for bringing back shame, I guess, is we saw Tony Gonzalez, Eric Swalwell, and Shifless McCormick all resign within a period of 2 weeks of each other. Of course, the ideal would be to see Cory Mills also get out, but 3 out of 4 is not bad in a 2-week period. I think that you're gonna see more people, um, get taken out of office through, I think that that's why you've seen a increase in those, expulsion threats is because it used to be where people just reside out of shame. You don't see that as much anymore, and so expulsion is threatened more, but now maybe we'll get back to resignations.
If I'm gonna leave you with anything, this is what I wanna leave you with. We have to bring morality and decency
Yes,
back to our politics.
on
And I'm
both
not
sides.
saying that we all have to kumbaya each other and hold hands and sing. What I'm saying is, if we don't all buy in, the system doesn't work. We have a constitution. We have rules that we play by. And if people continue to break the rules and then just expect to be sued and drag things out, which is what's happening. People are on the Republican side and this administration are blatantly breaking rules and waiting to be sued because they know it will be caught up in court forever.
Yep,
And if that's the road we have to take, if we have to continue to sue people until we get back to some normalcy, that's fine.
yep,
But what we need are decent people in office. What we need are people with a moral compass in
and a
office.
backbone, and a
People
backbone.
that actually want to take care of their constituents, not just to have a job so that they can have insider trading and
Yes,
make a lot of money.
and a backbone is another important thing that I think
Yeah.
that we w both sides have given into the executive power, from congressional power for decades, and the first thing that needs to be done, in theory, in 2026, but most likely in 2028, if I'm gonna be honest, under this president, is
Yeah.
to take back so much power back to the congressional authority, which is where it belongs from the Constitution of the United States of America.
Yep.
Would you mind sharing, your website if people want to donate, look at your
Oh,
policies, and
absolutely. It is gayforcongress.com, Gayfor Congress.com. And if you haven't seen my commercial, it is on the website. Please go and see that. It's kind of funny and uplifting, but true, and talks about the things that we're all struggling from. But I think it's a different take on politics, and I think it's necessary right now.
well, of course, I thank you for, kind of joining this race. I think that oftentimes I ask people why they wanted to run for Congress during this time, like, I appreciate it, but it's like, "Why?" But I appreciate we need people, like you to run for office, even in these districts that are really uphill battles. We don't know how I think that it's really easy to assume that people are just not gonna vote for Democrats and then just don't run anyone. It's better to run someone and give a serious race and at least maybe if if people lose, at least they might see like, "Oh, maybe I will change a few things and maybe be a better congressperson," but I'm not holding out my hope
So
for, uh
I mean, I hope so. I hope that Jimmy Petronis is going to take all of my talking points and do something about them, even if I don't win. I hope he builds a VA hospital. I hope he takes care of our vets. I hope he does the things that he says he's going to do now that I'm running against him, but I doubt he will. People need to run for office because we need good, moral, normal folks in
people need
office. We
choices
don't
also.
it's $10,000 to run for Congress in Florida, $10,440.
Right
If
there.
you don't get your petitions, that almost guarantees that if you're not one of those people that has an extra $10,000 laying around, then you're not gonna be able to run. Um, I got my petitions in spectacular fashion, so I don't have to pay the $10,000, But as long as we have obstacles like that, normal people can't run for office. So, yeah, some rules need to be changed, and we need to make it easier, not harder to vote.
I fully agree with you. Well, thank you for joining the fight, and I wish you luck um in November. Assuming you don't have a primary.
I
Last time I
don't.
checked, I don't think you do.
Mm-mm.
Um, so good luck in November, and I hope you can make up the next 15 points that you didn't do in the last election. But so many things have happened that I think you'll be able to do it in November.
Thank you. I hope everybody will follow along. I won't disappoint anybody, I promise you.
Well, thank you for joining, and I hope you have a great day.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining. That was my conversation with Florida's first congressional candidate, Gay Valimont. Um, and she is running against Republican Jimmy Patronis. This is Matt Gaetz's old district. She ran in the special election last year and overperformed Democratic National by 15 points. And she's running again to beat him again. And hopefully she wins this time. And I hope that everyone subscribes. And I have free and paid subscriptions. I don't paywall anything, but my paid subscriptions are $12 a month and $100 a year. I hope you subscribe either for free or the paid subscriptions, and I hope you have a great day.